Morning, everybody. Thank you, Lou. It's really, really lovely to be back, and really nice to see so many people on the session today, including some people that were involved in the research. So that's lovely to see you. Our research focused primarily on Cambridgeshire, and we're really keen to look at what was happening here in particular. So we'll be exploring some of that research this morning, but just to start with, Lizzie and I thought we'd just introduce ourselves. So I'm Kelly, I'm a business psychologist. I'm based in Cambridge, and I work with all sorts of different organisations, different teams, looking at how to help the teams be more effective, essentially. Lizzie, did you just want to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi, my name's Lizzie Bradbury. I'm the marketing manager at COEL. This isn't the first time we've worked with Kelly. And the work we do, which is design and fit out for offices and laboratories and pretty much any working environment, at the heart of that is wellbeing. And 7 years ago, we did some research with Kelly on wellbeing in the workplace. And then with the recent extraordinary 2 years that we're getting on with, I contacted Kelly to see if we could do some research in the way we work now.
Thank you, Lizzie. Start of this year, which actually feels like an incredibly long time ago already in terms of what's happened in the year. Some of you may remember we were with Lou and the Cambridge Network. Catherine Wood and I were talking at the time about where we're all working, all sorts of different places, and how we were kind of navigating our way through I think the start of the second or third wave of the pandemic at the time, just back in early January. And we noticed at the time there's some real differences in what was happening in Cambridge and what we were seeing with people compared to what we were seeing in the press internationally. Lots and lots of research was starting to come out, lots of different opinion pieces about what was happening for people. But we noticed locally around Cambridge, things seemed to be quite different. Lizzie was noticing the same at COEL, so with their various clients, they were spotting slightly different things were happening locally compared to what we were seeing internationally. So Lizzie and I were having a coffee on Zoom and decided that we thought it'd be really important to do some research locally just to understand more about what's happening here. No precedented data was available really in terms of what was happening. We all know that feeling. And so we wanted just to gather together some idea of what was happening in different businesses locally. So that's the sort of the start of this particular piece of research. And we're publishing the findings of the research this next week. So if you do want a copy of the research reports, if you could just pop into the chat box to Lizzie, myself or Lou, your email address, and we'll make sure you get a personal copy. We'll also be posting a quick summary of the report and access to the report itself as well on the Cambridge Network blog, so you'll be able to find that over the next week or two as well. So depending on how you want to get it in your inbox or to go and search for it, so you can share your email address whichever way feels comfortable for you. So just before we go into some of the key findings from the research this morning, just thought we'd just ask you all where you are at the moment. So I mean, we could all be in very different places. Either we're all back in the office, we've never left the office in some cases, never left the workplace. Some of us are hybrid or mobile, some of us are working from home. Some of us are working remotely. So I just wanted to ask if you could just pop where you're at in the where you're at currently into the chat box, and if you've got any feelings about that as well. It's great to be back in the office. I'm really comfortable working at home. Whatever that feels like for you, if you'd just like to take a moment just to share that. Publishing the findings of the research. Sorry, Helen. I missed that, sorry. Oh.
There's quite a mix of where people are working from at the moment.
Gosh, there really is, isn't there? We're all over the place, aren't
We
we?
are all over the place.
And
We
also,
are hybrid, working from home, office meetings, public events, always worked at home.
I'd say hybrid seems to be the most popular one coming up at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just the proportion of hybrid that's sort of varying, isn't it? Yeah.
Lovely. Thanks, everybody. It just shows how we're all in just completely different places. Even just the how many of us? 54 of us on the call this morning. So even just around Cambridge and the local area, all in very different places. So thank you for showing that. That's really interesting to see where everybody's based. So thank you. Just wanted to share a little bit more then about the research itself. So we had over 1,000 people very, very kindly spent a few minutes of their time to share some of their experiences. And when we asked people about, through a survey, we asked people about what had happened to them personally and in terms of work during the pandemic. And also asked people to share what their hopes were for how they were going to work moving forward as well. So we had over 1,000 people respond to that from 300 different organisations. We interviewed 30 people, about 30 people as well, didn't we, Lizzie? Lizzie was very busy on that. And we've got several case studies as well of organisations that really seem to have got to grips with some of the particular areas that we've been looking at as well. So we've captured all of that, really digested everything that everybody's been saying, and it's really clear that we've all been in quite different circumstances to each other. So that's what we wanted to unpick with this research today, is to really look at the differences between different groups of people, because that really affects how we manage the teams, how we design the workplace to fit around different groups and different people's needs. So we'll be sharing a few of those key findings with you today. Lizzie's then going to go on and share with you something more about the implications for workplace design as well, which I find really fascinating. She's got some very pretty slides to share with you, as well as some really inspiring workplaces that COEL have been working with too. So just to start with then, I'm just going to share some of the top headlines. There's lots more data in the actual report itself, and there's more behind the scenes as well, which I'm happy to talk to anybody about if they want to explore that individually too. It's really clear coming out of the research that some of us have had more time essentially over the last year, and some of us have become a lot more time poor. And that's had quite a different impact on different groups of us. So some people, nearly half of us, have become more time rich, and we've been able to be more connected with our friends and family. We've felt we've been able to work more productively, and it's been quite a positive experience outside, obviously, the social implications and health implications of the pandemic. Talking about in a work context, we've had more time available to be able to dedicate to work. That's good in some ways. That brings us challenges now in others. But we'll explore that a little bit more later on. A quarter of people that responded to our survey was saying they've become a lot more time poor, and the impact of that is a lack of connection with the wider social network. It's really affected those people's mental well-being, and there's real implications there for resilience and how people are able to adapt to further change moving forward. So there's these two quite significant different experiences that people have had. So in terms of managing a team of people or larger groups of people, there's going to be quite different experiences that you'll see in different people within the same team. As well, just in terms of productivity, 4 in 10 of us, impressively, feel that we've been much more productive over the last 12 to 18 months. We feel now more able to adapt to change. We feel we've got clearer priorities. We've had more realistic goals that we've been able to set, and all of those things connect with each other. Which is the cause and which is the effect? It's really hard to say. It could be that we've set more realistic goals for ourselves and therefore feel more productive. But the reality is for 4 in 10 people, they've had this changed experience in terms of their productivity. Moving forward now, I guess some people will be worried that making further change to how they're working might affect their productivity. And certainly some people that we've talked to have been concerned about more changes in how they engage with the workplace and how that affects their productivity moving forward. Some people have felt less productive. So 1 in 5 of us have felt less productive at work. We've felt less connected to our team. We've felt less connected to people beyond our immediate team as well. And fun's been more difficult. And it's had an ongoing impact in terms of how people think about work and how they connect, what their attitudes are to work generally. So some interesting things there around productivity. There's lots more detail in the report if you want to look at this in a bit more detail. There's an interesting area, particularly at the moment, as we are all shifting around into a different setup again, as you've all just been saying in the chat, or the setup that you have. At the start of the pandemic, where people were able to get themselves set up with decent broadband, where they've had the right kit to be able to work wherever they were at the time, they are now in a place where they feel that they're much more resilient and able to adapt to change. Throughout the pandemic, they've been able to share information with each other, they've felt more able to do that, and they've had a more positive relationship with their manager. Slightly smaller number of us don't feel that we've had the right kit to actually be able to function. This group has definitely been much more keen to get back to the workplace. It could be all sorts of different technology, access to information, or just being able to function with each other. So they just haven't had the kit available to really work effectively. And that's had a real impact on people's work-life balance. It's affected their mental well-being, and it affects how we're able to connect with each other, just in terms of sharing and building on each other's ideas, and being able to adapt, I guess, to change as well. So the kit that people have access to, the setup they have, really matters. And what we've seen is that where people don't have the right kit, this is one of the key drivers that's bringing people back to the workplace itself. So if you're managing people, it might be worth having a check-in with people in terms of, if they're planning to stay working from home longer term, what they need to be able to function effectively at home. So there are a certain number of people that said, I don't feel I've got the right kit, but I've got no intention of going back to the workplace full time. So it's interesting to see what those needs are for each person, perhaps, that's working in your team, and how they get access to those different things. And then there's a fourth key finding, and that's just about people's sense of belonging. So belonging to their team. Now, interestingly, the crisis seems to have helped 1 in 5 of us feel more connected. So as we've gone through a crisis together, we've found a way to adapt, we've responded to each other in different ways, and somehow, miraculously, we've made it through the other side of what's been quite a difficult time. And this group of people feel that they've got a more positive relationship with their manager. Trust has really developed in the team more than it had been even before the pandemic, and that they've had chances to mentor, develop each other, and they've really bonded together coming through the pandemic. So that's 1 in 5 of us. I'm impressed by that group. Well done if you're one of those people. And a larger group of us have felt more disconnected from the team. There's less belonging in the team. There's less fun. It is quite a lot harder, isn't it, to have fun when you're all sort of remote from each other. Even early Zoom meetings of social connection seem to have waned in more recent times. So this group that have got less team belonging also feel less connected to the wider organisation as well. And that has some real knock-on effects in terms of people's engagement, people's intention to stay with the organisation, and really people's ability to connect with where the organisation is moving forward as well. So there's some key sort of differences in terms of people's experiences. So these are just four key highlights just to pull out, just in terms of some of the different experiences that people have had over the last 18 months. So we asked people, well, you know, what's your top priority for the workplace over the next few months? So we mustered up a top 10, and these were the top areas that people are looking for in terms of how to reconnect with workplace and with each other. So there's a top 10 there, but I just wanted to pick out sort of 5 themes, because I'll explore those a little bit more in detail in a few minutes. So there's 5 themes here. There's one that's about feeling connected with the team, with other colleagues. There's a second theme around feeling connected to what's happening in the wider organisation. So what's happening in different teams, where are we going as an organisation, and to what extent we feel connected to that. People want to reconnect with that where they've missed that. There's a theme as well about visibility and performance. So are my efforts visible in the workplace? There's some implications here for how we manage people, and certainly from an HR perspective, for how we make sure people feel comfortable to be wherever it is that they choose or need to be as well. I'll unpack that in a bit more detail in a few seconds. And then there's a fourth one around our deal with the workplace and what the balance is for each of us, and how we strike that between work and home, and what the needs are of our particular role. And then there's a fifth theme around our connection to culture and to purpose and to that wider organisation piece. So there's 5 themes there. And if anybody's got any questions, by the way, sorry, I forgot to say this earlier, if anybody's got any questions, if you want to pop those in the chat, we've got some time at the end to be able to go through any questions that you pose as they come to you while we're talking, or you're more than welcome to share your questions at the end as well. So do feel free to do that. So they're the top 10. So just to explore the first of those, so there's a piece here about staying connected with people, and it really seems to depend, from the research that we've done, it really seems to depend on your management level as to how you're wanting to connect back in the workplace at the moment. So people that are senior, wanting to come back to connect with the brand, with the culture. I guess this reflects their role as leaders in the organisation, to be visible, to be seen, and to get that feel of being back in the workplace together. It's quite hard to lead, isn't it, when you're working remotely. Middle managers, a lot of middle managers' roles seem to have changed during the pandemic. That's what the interviews that we've had, the feedback that we've got from this particular group. More middle managers want to feel connected again across those different teams that they may not have been connected to previously, or they've lost touch with what's happening across different parts of the organisation, and they're involved in different loops, different circles when they're reconnected in the office. And that's something that this group seems to have missed, is those organic conversations, cross-team conversations that middle managers have to know what's really happening. Line managers seem to be especially keen on having a bit of a team reset. So their focus is much more on their local environment, their local team, getting people functioning together in whatever new setup the team has. People have got different expectations. How are the teams functioning together? Some people are going to be in the workplace, some people may be remotely. How do we get that really working as a team, and resetting that team agreement? And that's the focus, it seems, for line managers at the moment. Whereas non-managers seem to be focused in a slightly different way. They've had all the team conversations, and they want to reconnect with their colleagues that they haven't seen, the kind of acquaintances in the workplace that they haven't seen through any sort of formal communication, perhaps in recent months. So where people have had a lot of Zoom meetings, it might be that it's these organic, these water cooler chats that people have missed. And so for that group, connecting with those other colleagues that they haven't seen for a while seems to be something that's most important. So question here is really, how do we manage time when we are together in the workplace? So you've got some people wanting to focus on the team. You've got some people wanting to spend time connecting with other people. So if you're having team days where people are coming in for certain days a week, You may find that there's some tension with how people are wanting to spend their time in the hours that they're in the office. So it might be worth, if you're running a meeting, it might be worth thinking about how much emphasis is on the team versus what emphasis is on the time that people are spending at their lunch break, or the time that they've got around the meeting itself. So there's some tensions there. So it might be something just to keep an eye on if you're managing that team. Second theme is about people's experience. So we're talking about how people are connected, how people are knowing what's going on in the organisation. And there's a whole thread here now in terms of implications about creating a consistent experience wherever people are. So are people able to get access to the same information? Are people able to log into a meeting and it is the same whether they're at home or whether they're remotely? Are people able to hear the same kind of conversations or experience the same access to the brands, to the meaning of the workplace? Are they getting access to the same benefits if they're working remotely as to whether they're working in the office? Younger people seem to have a particular interest in being back in the loop of what's happening in the organisation. They want to feel reconnected with the wider workplace. This might reflect the different networks that people have in terms of who they've spent most time with over the last 18 months. A particular group that came out of our research was about neurodivergent workers. So people that have got all sorts of different sort of special brains and different thinking patterns, whether they're autistic, dyslexic, dyspraxic. There's a whole myriad of different sort of neurodivergent thinking patterns. And this particular group, people that identify themselves in this place, have placed more emphasis on the aesthetics of their working environments. This seems to be something that this group's particularly sensitive to. I talked to neurodivergent coach Nathan Whitbread about this to understand a little bit more. And he was saying, well, it's about coping strategies. So how people set themselves up to be able to work in the way that helps them be productive and comfortable for them. It matters as to where they're set up, and it takes time to get set up wherever they are. So if they are now expected to be mobile, hybrid, working in different places, coming into a workplace where the social rules, perhaps the unspoken social rules of how people spend time together, the health and safety aspects even of direction of flow around the office and masks and all sorts of different things that people might need to still navigate in the workplace. Understanding how to manage themselves in terms of working at home, working in the office, working other places, interacting with different people. This all seems to affect this group, particularly around how they set up their coping strategies. So, and we do have lots of people that are neurodivergent in Cambridge. It seems to be a particular environment that attracts these people with this special thinking style to the offices that we have here. So you may have neurodivergent workers around you, in your teams, in your workplace. They're particularly sensitive to understanding what's expected of them. So this hybrid setup that some people may have, they want to explore that in a bit more detail. So it might be something that you might want to explore with your teams to see how to create as consistent an experience for people as possible. That seems really important to that group in particular. So really interesting finding there in Cambridge. Third area was about visibility presenteeism. And how people feel that they're performing and being seen to perform. This really curious thing here around introverts versus extroverts in terms of personality types and how people with different personalities are responding to this at the moment. So we noticed that introverts are really keen over the next few months to make sure that their work effort is visible. The outputs of what they do are visible. People can see them being delivering wherever it is that they're based. Extroverts, slightly different emphasis, dare I say. It's very subtle, but slightly different emphasis in terms of how they're showing up at work. And they're spending more time wanting to be seen physically in the office, being sort of connecting, talking with people and moving things forward. So for them, it's much more about the people connection. That subtle difference affects how people will physically engage with the workplace. Lizzie will talk about this in a little bit more detail in a few minutes, but there's a subtle difference there. And to me, a real question emerges about what presenteeism means for people. So if people are concerned about their work outputs, so your extroverts, if there's problems when they're working at home, they might be under pressure to still feel that they need to deliver things. They're at higher risk of working longer hours and at higher risk potentially of burnout if it's not clear that their performance is being managed in a certain way and the expectation is set in terms of what is achievable. So when people are at home alone, there's a greater risk of remote presenteeism for people. How do they know when it's okay to essentially go home? So we used to have those cues in the office where we could head out the door because everybody had seen that it had been a crazy day. So it's slightly different for extroverts. So they seem to be more keen to be back in the workplace, in contact, and having more meetings. And that's the more meaningful element of presenteeism for that group. So slightly different in terms of behaviours between these two groups. And they interact with the workplace in different ways. So visibility and how people can be seen when they're in the office really matters. And Lizzie's got some lovely ideas and thoughts about how COEL are helping people with that at the moment. In our report, I've interviewed Catherine Wood. She's a career management expert, really helps people in terms of how they show up at work. She's had some great tips about key skills for hybrid working, so what it means to really be doing that well in the workplace. And one of the areas that she mentioned was about role modelling behaviours. So role model as a manager, role model the behaviours that you want to see in the team. So if you need people to be present in the workplace at certain times, going home, these are the old cues that we used to have in terms of it's done, the end of the day. So it's those boundaries around the work day. So how you act yourself in terms of when you're sending messages, when you're in the office, how you're using the time in the office, that all matters now as social cues in a slightly different way to what it had done 2 or 3 years ago. It's just subtly different, but it really does seem to matter. So a fourth area was about managing expectations and how we do that fairly between different people in our teams. So we've all developed a bit of an informal deal, haven't we, in terms of the hours that we work, when and where we show up in over our 24-hour day, even sometimes. And there does seem to be a pressure on some to be back in the workplace, others feeling quite different about that. So people that are driven to be back in the workplace, that want to be back, are coming in to feel more productive and feel more in the loop. Those that are wanting to spend more time at home, and there is a difference here in terms of life stage as well. So the people that are heading back to the office tend to be the people that are the older workers and the youngest workers. And then there's the group in the middle, the Gen Y and some Gen X, the 30-something, mid-40-something age range people that are generally more keen to be more hybrid, more home-based. And so that there's two slightly different groups here in the workforce. And those tending to want to spend more time at home are wanting to manage their energy for their family, for their friends, and for their newfound hobbies that they've got at home. So it's slightly different there. We've all got a slightly different deal that we've set up perhaps informally with our managers. And there's a challenge now in terms of formalising what the expectations are for people, what is getting delivered. We've got past the drama of the pandemic. This is now looking like a more normal reality. So people are settling back into different routines, and there can be quite a challenge for managers who've got all sorts of different deals that they've got set up with people at the moment. So how managers coordinate between different people's expectations is a challenge to explore. So just worth just being conscious of that as well at the moment. And we've got more about that, more detail about that in the report itself. And then finally, that fifth area about the connection with the brand, connection with the workplace, and the wider meaning. I guess an implication of that is really about how we attract, engage and retain our workers. So when Lizzie and I started this research back in May, it feels like it's quite a long time ago now. 4% of people were saying they think about moving between employers, thinking maybe over the next 6 months they might start looking. And even up till September, when we were still running the research, it's still 4% of people. Cambridge Network and other recruiters in the city have noticed in the last few weeks that that's starting to change. So there's more people starting to be present, looking for different roles. There's a huge number of vacancies out there, as we all know, and I think that's started to nudge people into starting to explore different things. So although in social media it seems to be labelled the Great Resignation, people are actually just shifting to fit with a different employer that works for them. So what we offer in terms of the environment for people to come into the workplace seems to really matter. So 47% of people that responded to our survey said that they missed the mentoring opportunities that the workplace offers. But there's something there about how we connect with our team as well. And if people are suddenly expected to be working remotely from home, is that really the deal that they signed up to when they first took a job? So people are just pausing on that and starting to look at those different opportunities. So it's a really important time to be thinking about what that deal is for people, who the competitors are for people in the workforce, for people in your team, because they look possibly a little bit different to what they did 2 years ago. You know, we're not that far from London, and salaries look slightly different there. People want different setup, people want more flexible working, and several recruiters that we've spoken to over the last few months are saying there can be a gap between those expectations, between workers and between what employers are willing to offer. So it is a good time to be thinking about just checking in with people and making sure that their expectations are being met in some way, and that as an employer you're clear about what it is that you're offering to people. So really good opportunity to look around the workplace, and Lizzie's going to be talking a bit more now just about how to make that as enticing as possible to bring people into you as an employer. So hopefully that's helped as a quick whistle-stop tour, and I'll let Lizzie now talk through some areas of what the work that she's been doing to help places look amazing. So Lizzie, over to you.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you to everyone who has joined us today, and for all the comments that keep coming through. These spicy little snippets are very distracting because I keep wanting to get involved in each new discussion. I'm just waiting a second because Lou from Cambridge Network's kindly loading my PowerPoint. I had a couple of technical difficulties. Here we go. So yes, once again, thank you very much for joining us today for Lost in Location and how to manage the new way we work. Okay, Lou, next slide, please. So before 2020, a lot of people worked in white box offices, but that just won't cut it anymore. COVID-19 and the restrictions it brought created a turning point, and we're moving towards a more fluid, agile style of working. I'm guessing the reason why you're all here today is because you're looking for some answers to the question of how do we get our teams happily back into the workplace. And there's no one size fits all answer to this, but in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to show you some evidence of why we need to change our workplaces to fit in with the new way of working, and also some ideas of how to achieve it. If you're anything like me, I have to have something visible to see rather than a hypothetical relay on it. Okay, next slide, please, Lou. After our comfortable experience for most of working from home, or maybe not in some cases, the first element we need to think of is we need to make our workplace better than home. If you've got to make an environment where people want to go, it has to be better than their home environment now. If you want people to love what they do, they need to love where they're doing it. Next slide, please, Lou. The second element is something which COEL always consider with every job. It's how to incorporate wellbeing within the workplace. This nifty little pie chart lists quite a few elements of workplace engagement, the top 8 factors, wellbeing being the one I'm talking about now. But what is quite interesting to note is how many of those factors do rely on being in the workplace, such as my manager, the leadership, personal growth, my team. So with COVID having taken its restrictions, we need to think about how we can bolster people when they come into the workplace and give them something which supports their working needs. Research by the National Centre for Social Research links working from home during the pandemic to increased levels of loneliness and mental distress. As Kelly's highlighted, this hasn't been the case for everyone, but as employers, everyone does need to be taken into account. And if people are coming to the workplace, we need to think about these factors. In order to manage employees' anxiety levels moving forward, businesses must communicate their post-COVID workplace plans in detail. This gives employees comfort and reassurance that it's all in hand. The new workplace has to be a healthy, uplifting and positive space which enhances interpersonal relationships. But it also needs to attract and retain talent. And in order to do that, we do need a flexible approach and a strong purpose and clear communication. Next slide, please, Lou. So there was a study carried out by O2 in April 2020, which showed that 39% of people had a lack of suitable working space at home. I'm sure everyone's familiar with some of the Heath Robinson nifty inventions that went on during this time, with ironing boards used as standing desks and all kinds of weird and wonderful contraptions to help aid people. According to McKinsey, one of the research studies, more than half the workforce has little or no opportunity for remote work, especially relating to people with jobs requiring collaboration or using specialised machinery, or jobs requiring travel. So obviously that needs to be taken into account. The same report also went on to explain that during the pandemic, employers found that while some tasks can be done very effectively remotely, many and most probably are done more effectively in person. These activities may include things like counselling, coaching, providing advice and feedback, building customer and colleague relationships, and bringing new employees into the workplace, negotiating and making critical decisions, all these things which rely slightly more on that interpersonal relationship you build up. Next slide, please, Lou. So the fourth factor is it's all about space. Oh, Lou, it's got the, you need to flick on the, that's right, perfect. So let's talk about, at the heart of it's all about space is the flexibility required within the space. And what works for one place of work may not work for another. And similarly, what works for one employee may not work for another. That's one of the joys of the workplace, that it caters for all needs. Now, the most basic requirement in the workplace is to provide a safe place to work, a well-operated workplace with the right equipment and well-run facilities. This can be seen in good ergonomic furniture, connectivity and cybersecurity, right technological equipment and good ventilation and lighting. Next one, please, Lou. that old well-being and comfort once again. The way we're seeing this in the design industry is furniture with a softer, less rigid style, providing a sense of relaxation, a nod to the residential style of working which we've been exposed to. This is a really easy thing to incorporate in small ways as well. Plants and art and artifact, they all encourage a sense of feeling at home and being at one with your surroundings. Again, please, Lou. Uplifting experiences. Well, I think we're all in need of this after the last getting on for 2 years. This can be adopted in many ways, and I've chosen to talk about the colour palette, which can enhance different areas with a very succinct feel, whether that's calm, tranquil shades or energising and exciting, zesty colours. We've had a very interesting project recently, which has been laboratory work next to office work, in which the laboratory is very bright and white, and we created a very sort of dark blue scheme for next door as a soft antidote towards the clinical light that they're used to, which worked very well. So that needs to be thought through. Next one, please, Lou. Inspiring connections. Focus on creating innovative spaces where people can inspire and build customer and colleague relationships. This is really important, and it helps people feel at home when creating new connections. As human beings, our basic need to connect and collaborate is part of our hard wiring. But for many, the physical absence from the team mates after such a long period has been one of the things we've missed the most. There's also a realization that while we all talk about collaboration and having social spaces, we do need private spaces and the secluded areas to have some time to focus, and perhaps delving more into things Kelly talked about with neurodivergent members of staff who may require that private space at times. This is very easily achieved through acoustic booths and meeting areas. Next one, please, Lou. Oh, I jumped that. Apologies, everyone. Next one. So a sense of identity and belonging. This is really important, and I think it's something we've all sensed deeply over the course of the last 2 years, with feeling part of something, feeling a connection. And really, as an employer, you want your employees to feel part of their company and be happy to be part of it, form that connection, retain them and make them happy to be part of a team. It also relates to the workplace now becoming the destination of choice rather than necessity. It has to be a place which supports and elevates the working day. It needs to be styled to emanate the company culture and to encourage that team mentality. Investment in creating these amazing and enriching workspaces will be considered a trademark of your company and a benefit to those who work there. Styling can take on so many different forms. It could be witty and sophisticated, or it could be on trend. And I think especially in a city like Cambridge, where a lot of the salaries are similar within the same sector, your workplace now plays a real role in retaining staff or attracting new talent. Next slide, please, Lou. So what does that look like, those different elements? How can I bring it to life to show you how it can be incorporated? Well, I mean, these are obviously grand scale projects I'm going to be talking about, but they can be done on a smaller scale. And the first one had to be Bidwells, because they're an amazingly progressive company. They came to us a few years ago, and they had a vision to become a completely agile working space. I think they must have had a crystal ball looking into the future. And so we were very privileged to be offered the work in designing and completely fitting out their headquarters in Trumpington. It's 27,000 square feet. It had close to 300 employees in there, and the work took a year. Next slide, please, Lou. So the interior of Bidwells House was designed as one large, flexible, open plan space to enable airflow, but to incorporate single walls to define zones and folding walls to provide privacy when needed. So this can be seen on the first image in the top right-hand corner. The warm and welcoming client reception area doubles as an additional informal meeting and workspace as well. And I don't know if many of you have been in there, but it really is a fantastic experience to go in. You could be in a 5-star hotel in many ways, but that's seen in the top left-hand corner, the reception desk area. And a key factor to their design, I felt, was how close many of the seating areas were to the windows. And I do have a fact about working near windows, which is incredible. The World Green Building Council reported that workers in offices that worked near windows slept 45 minutes more on average than workers that didn't. And their productive levels were up by 15% compared to those who didn't as well. So it is a phenomenal factor to just have that natural daylight coming through and to encourage desk space by windows where possible. They also had multifunctional bench tables, which could be used as desks or cafe, or part of the cafe zone, and that's seen in the middle bar, both to the right and to the left. Though it was very important, though, to have different areas to have private meetings. Now, these are seen on the bottom bar. You've got more of a traditional meeting room on the left-hand side, and then in the middle and the right-hand side, you've got these lovely touchdown points, which are by windows with sort of a softer feel of sofas and cushions. Those are my personal favourite. Next slide, please, Lou. Oh. Next slide, please, Lou. Thank you. We were very lucky to get great positive feedback from Bidwells, but they were very keen as well to measure the difference that this new design and fit out had made, and ran a number of surveys. We've got this great quote from Richard Pillsworth, which sums up perhaps two of the best findings. One was that since we occupied the newly designed space, we have a current employee satisfaction of 70% compared with 53% pre-move, which is just fantastic validation to receive. Interestingly, though, also that the number of employee sick days dropped by 23% as well. So fantastic. I can also say that they did find a number of ecological benefits as well, and economical benefits to do with the way they'd reviewed how they worked. It was tremendously successful on a grand scale. Next slide, please, Lou. This is a really interesting case study for Archant. These are clients they are a publishing house based in Norwich. They did a very drastic change, consolidating 3 floors into 1. And we are particularly proud of this as it was done during lockdown, and we managed to finish the project on time and within budget, which was under immense duress at times, and we're very, very pleased to have completed the job so well on target. Next slide, please, Lou. So the interior space of Archant, space planning was absolutely key with this, and the eye-catching furniture needed to be thoughtfully choreographed to create clearly defined zones. Acoustic panelling, which you can see in the right-hand top photo, or sound clouds as I like to call them, were strategically placed above work tables to minimise noise and distraction, which is particularly important if you're going for a more open plan working environment. The colour palette that was adopted depicted soft hues of greys and green and blue, but we added an occasional illuminating pop of sunshine yellow, and in some cases lime green as well. Just gives an injection of energy, which is fantastic to see. Provision of sleek and sophisticated tea break area allowed teammates to enjoy precious moments away from their desks to get a hot drink or snack and spark ideas off colleagues. Interestingly, kitchen area is one of the areas that has received the most interest, I'd say, over the last 20 months or so since the pandemic broke out. This sort of investment in creating a collaborative area and somewhere where employees can go and feel they can have time out with their team, and also for the employers to send a message out that we value you, we want to nurture you, we want to look after you. Also key to supporting workers' needs is to do thoughtful positioning of elegant task lighting. This really aids whatever style of working you're doing and can set the ambience for the room or the zone you're in. Next slide, please, Lou. Lovely quote here from Dee Wilmot, who's the Chief People and Transformation Officer for Archant. As part of ongoing changes, we took the bold step to reduce our office footprint and embrace a radically different way of working. Moving to an agile working environment provided us with the comfort that the changes implemented were in line with our strategies and company goals. Our staff love the new office space. Again, Dee is paying reference, as we mentioned with Bidwells as well, to the office footprint and the ecological side of becoming more sustainable within your working environment. This is something that we're seeing more and more, and obviously is critical in this day and age. Next slide, please, Lou. So, some more general points about how you can incorporate well-being and make the workplace more inspiring. I've got a lovely selection of photos of recent clients here. Now, the interesting thing for me is we've got a pharmaceutical client there, a publishing company, marketing company rather there, and we've also got a beauty salon. I did say we did lots of different working environments, but actually I think you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference between who was who. It just shows you how far we've come in design these days and how much we do pay reverence to creating a softer, more residential style of working. Again, please note the use of biophilia and access to windows where possible. Please, could you do the next slide, please, Lou? Flexible furniture to inspire connections. Again, a really simple way to create different zones. So we've got these really fun beach huts in the top left-hand corner, which they seem to be gaining in popularity. I think they just they have very practical purpose, creating a more private area for you to go and have a chat, more intimate section in the room, but also they're great fun and a bit of a talking point as well. We've got the middle photo, which is a breakfast bar, but it's set up amongst desks actually. And again, it goes back to that employer sending the message across that they want you to feel at home and to feel free to go and have a chat with a colleague, get a cup of tea, encouraging a bit of sociability within the workplace. The more private meeting booths to the right. And then you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, the more traditional corporate look of a meeting room. But interestingly enough, that is a financial company. But if you see to the far left on the bottom-hand side, they do have a great sense of fun and frivolity as well. In their kitchen, they set up a great feature ceiling and also a ping pong table, just to encourage people to go and have fun in their working day. Maybe just let off a bit of steam and have a bit of ping pong. So good fun. Next slide, please, Lou. Next slide, please, Lou. Thank you. So we talked about identity and belonging before, and actually, I forgot to mention on one of the previous slides, there was a lovely one of Crafted, the marketing company I was talking about, where they had their logo set in plants and biophilia. And it's a wonderful design. But we talked about wall art as well, and a great way to sort of make your company culture come to life and to make people aware of the history of it, or maybe the direction it's taking, is to do some beautiful wall art. This is taken from the works at the Unity campus. I've got this lovely quote saying, "Your connections to all the things around you literally define who you are." And it was a brilliant use of space, quite frankly. It was a very bland, boring wall, nothing to say about it, but suddenly you've got this huge statement and something which really draws you to the space. So certainly look at walls when you're thinking about identity and belonging. Next slide, please, Lou. This is a really simple message, but it's really important. Make sure that everything works. I mean, one of the great benefits of having a workplace is to have something which supports your operational requirements, and good Wi-Fi, ergonomic furniture, high quality machinery such as printers, they're all vital. And that is what many employees do value. providing a fully catered service takes away the stresses felt from working from home for many. And it sends that message out again, which is all important, that your employer is there to support you and help you thrive in the work that you do. It's a bit like renting, and one of the benefits of renting is that the landlord's duty is to repair should anything go wrong. The onus here is on the employer to look after the employee. Next slide, please, Lou. So just to sum up about the 4 key factors going into design would be to make it better than home when you're considering workplace design, to incorporate wellbeing, to make it fluid, agile and hybrid, and to think about the space. It's all about the space and how you utilise it. Next slide, please, Lou. Any questions, do come to me. If we don't have time in this session, I'm on LinkedIn, or you could email me directly. And thank you very much for joining us. I look forward to further discussions. Last slide, Lou. Thank you.
Lizzie, fabulous. Thank you so much. I honestly just love peering through the window of all those different organisations. They look amazing. So thank you for that. That's brilliant. Just in the last few minutes that we have with you, we just wanted to ask you a question again. I have to say it's been amazing just having a quick read of some of the comments in the chat. That's been a fascinating sideline going on for us all in the audience while Lizzie and I have been presenting. So thank you for contributions, thoughts, challenges to what we've been saying. There's a whole host of different things there and a few questions in there. So what we'll do after 10:30, we'll stay on if anybody wants to talk to us, have any questions that they want answering, or wants to listen to any other people's questions after 10:30, then do stay on the line. But just before we all head out for 10:30, just wondered if you could share in the chats where you're at the moment in terms of what you personally most want to see over the next few months for you. So all those different things that Lizzie and I have just been talking about in terms of teams, of workplace, of how your setup is at home. What's your top one want for yourself over the next few months? And then while everybody's just crafting some finer goals for yourselves, we'll just share again that in terms of access to the report, thank you to everybody that shared your email addresses with us. We'll make sure you each get a copy of the reports. Otherwise, it'll be available via the Cambridge Network website next week as well. So there's lots of comments in the chat there. We've actually got some more detail in the reports. If you do want to talk to us both, we're happy to meet with individual people as well and talk through any particular questions that you have about your workplace and how it marries up with the results of what else is happening around Cambridge as well. So thank you ever so much for joining us. Lee's just going to come back in just to wrap up. Thank you, Lee.
Yes, I was going to say thank you so much to both of you for absolutely fascinating discussion. You're right, it just goes off into a myriad of different areas. And there were questions in the chat which we haven't got around to, and I don't know whether we just take those offline and circulate some of the stuff in the follow-up email as well. Yes, we have been recording, so we'll send that round to everybody so you can relive it, including all my lovely slide driving. But yeah, fantastic session really, and so thought-provoking as well, whether you're introvert, extrovert, and the types of working places that you might like, plus also the way that workplaces have changed to become more residential. I mean, just fascinating. Our world has changed, and not for the worst, I think.